Welcome to This Story Is Mine. Today's interview is with Julie. Julie is a 60-something that when most people are looking to slow down and settle down in their twilight years, this lady is full of beans and energy and enthusiasm for life, and she, after 4 marriages, has moved down from Yorkshire 400 miles to Leon Solent to be closer to her family. She's got a great story, and I hope you enjoy watching it.
My name is Julie, and this story is mine.
First time we've met 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, brilliant.
You've already started talking about stuff that just seems so exciting and interesting. So let's go right back to the beginning, where you grew up, what family life was like, brothers, sisters, all that sort of thing.
Right, yeah. I grew up in a place called Clayton, which is in Manchester, and Manchester City Stadium is actually there now. But it was a coal mine when I was a little girl where the stadium is. At this side of the coal mine was a row of shops that used to sell roast chickens on spits. Yeah, I must have been about 8 when I'm remembering this. And opposite was the first cinema. And I remember my dad saying, you can choose Chitty Bang Bang or Oliver. You can only pick one that you go and see. So when I was 18, I told him I was a deprived child because I could only ever see one of them. Clayton, the street I lived on was a top half and a bottom half of terraced houses. And every door would be open. Every door. As growing up, you could go for a cup of tea with someone or knock on someone's door.
What sort of decade are we talking about?
1960s. Yeah. I was 3, I think, when I moved there, but I lived in that house till I was 21. Yeah, so all the neighbours, everyone was your auntie this or your uncle the other. The street itself, you can just remember, is just houses like that. And the road was tarmac, which bubbled every summer, so you just sit playing in the road in the tarmac. And this was a massive house in between these terrace houses that had the biggest pond in the back garden, and that guy was called Captain Sherwood. Captain Sherwood.
Sounds like I'm thinking of the guy out of Mary Poppins.
Yeah, I know. But, my life follows her story, I tell you. And so he let me play in that garden, and I've got a book underneath my TV down there full. It's a butterfly book, and I was awarded it for going to church. And I collected caterpillars in his garden. I collected frogs. I collected, all sorts. Any creature. I just loved it. So I played out all day, every day. We'd bike. We'd play games, mostly with the boys, I have to say, because I had a brother, so I was always with the boys. And also I'd play in the rectory, which was across the road. And that was a massive, massive house with loads of gardens. And my mum and dad, as you crossed from Barrington Street over North Road, was a park called Clayton Park. And that still has the Victorian house in it with a moat round. And when I was about 11, the moat was refilled and lots of ducks and all animals came from everywhere. My dad was a big person for putting us in his Morris Minor estate car with the wood round. 2 children in the boot, grandparents, mum and dad in the front. And would take us up Mosley, up Saddleworth Moors. Right, okay. At 10 years old, nearly 11, I was at Seymour Road School, and we'd gone swimming class after lunch. Something really bad happened, and my best friend, who was the best swimmer in the class, was up at the deep end, and the nearly swimmers, which was me, was in the 3-foot end. She, bless, was told to get in the water with about 10 other children and don't lift your head up till you get to the other end. And the teacher was very strict. I could still hear that voice now. What we didn't know, my friend was sick halfway up and she choked and died. But she swam to me and I was only tiny, very tiny. And I had hold of her, but I didn't know all this had happened. We didn't know any of it. And I got her to the side and my teacher got me and Elaine out. So Bless goes home and the police arrived 2 hours later and told me she died. So that was terrible at 10 years old. What I'm telling you this for is then my dad didn't want me being scared of water. My dad couldn't swim, never swam in his life. So he went and bought a biggest dinghy you had ever seen. And it was about 6 foot and I was 3 foot nothing at the time. And he'd take me on the canal in Clayton with all the dead dogs and everything else. No. So here's another story now. It was after the school holidays and it was the 6 weeks holidays before I went to high school. And I was watching all these kids in the park that were bigger than me on a monkey bar, jumping up and whatever they're doing. So then Julie decides when all these big children disappear to have a go. But I went on the opposite end to where they were. So I stood on these two steps and then reached up and went to jump. And as I jumped, the handle moved. So it was broken. And I fell and smashed my mouth and lost my two front teeth that had only just come.
Oh, not the other.
Yeah, your best ones, your second ones. And legs it round to Dad on the top one because you could just get in at the top one first, the top bowling green. I've got to finish my game of bowls, so I always said he was like Oliver Cromwell. And so Mum took me to the hospital. She couldn't stand the sight of the blood, so sent one of her friends in with me. So I had stitches. My teeth went through my lip and out this side and underneath. So yeah, this is where I'm not a vain person, but things have happened over the years that made you feel, you've got to keep this going, girl. You've got to keep it going. So that was my 6 weeks holidays. Then...
So you're probably, 10 or 11 at this age?
Yeah. So ready to go to high school. The choice was... There wasn't a choice, actually. There wasn't. Central High School for Girls on Whitworth Street in Manchester. Now then, right, okay. I grew up with every creed, every colour, every whatever, transgender, whatever you want to be. Loved them all. Loved them all. But I hated the high school. I was very shy, very quiet. 5 years, I think I cried every day. I just really hated that high school. And you didn't have a playground. We just had a car park as a playground. But in year 7, it was a wet playground time. And you had to just stay in the classroom. So the teacher was called Mrs. Canova or something like that, but she loved me. She absolutely loved the ground I walked on. I was like, it must have been teacher's pet back in them days. And 4 of us, 4 friends, decided we'd mess about in the classroom, and I picked up the rubbish bin, which was metal, and put it on one of my friends' heads. Okay. She did no more than chuck it off and smash a window. So we were like, oh God, what have we done? Because we weren't naughty kids. We weren't bad kids. So the form teacher come back after lunchtime and we're all sat down dead quiet. And she went, right, stand up, who's done this? And I stood up and she went, oh, Julie, it couldn't possibly be you. And I just sat back down. But I did tell her it was me. And we all had to pay £5 each. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So that school then, my dad, from me starting that school, had bought me a Brother Deluxe typewriter and was convinced I was going to be a PA. Yeah.
Thanks for my career.
But Julie had other delusions. I would have loved to have been a teacher. My qualifications only allowed me, when I finished, to go and be a nursery nurse. So I went to Tameside College for 2 years and did my nursery nursing, and I loved it. That was the start of me coming through and being Julie. Yeah. We met. He was the local paper boy. This is how crazy this was. And I met the family, and he had 10 brothers and sisters. We'd courted for 2-3 years, but we got married, and I got married in St Willowbroad's Church, in the Catholic Church, because to me it didn't matter to me. I would have yes, no, and the vicar at the time was into allowing other people into his church. Not that family. Not that family. Oh no, his mum had even gone to the priest on my wedding day and said that we had to have a full mass and full everything. Well, yeah, so at the altar I said, excuse me, can you stop? Yeah, can you stop right now? We'd married us and everything, that was fine. I went, no, we're not doing that. We've agreed on what was happening today. Yeah, so then, yeah, 10 years of them just putting me down. I then went on to have my second child and my third child. And I was madly in love with the first love of your life, but it wasn't coming back at all. So we were together 13, 14 years. All his family, he was a bricklayer, so all his family used to have him building extensions, building brand new houses. This is every weekend. He was football, absolute crazy for a local football team, and so we never saw him. And throughout most of that marriage, he'd say, just go get a divorce. It was just loveless, even though how much I loved him. So when I had Jane at 32, I needed an hysterectomy. And so I was on the ward waiting to go down to theatre. And the doctor said, right, we sign this. And she said, your husband has to sign. I said, what for? Your husband has to sign because we're taking your womb away. I went, I can't believe this. I said, my womb and my husband has to sign. We've got 3 children and I'm not planning on any more. Yeah, so I had to wait for him to come, even though I'd been whatever drugs to go down to theatre. So that happened and I got home. No help whatsoever from any of the family. And I woke up one day and I suddenly had this strength from somewhere that I knew I had to do something about my life. Yes, I did. So I told him I was getting a divorce. But his family, for 7 years, took me personally through the courts. It was awful. So that went on for 7 years. In that time, I think after 5 years, I met somebody else. You can't write it. And right, the first guy was about 5'8". I would say, and please don't take offence at this, he had small man syndrome. So anything in his will didn't suit him. He'd be bolshy, he'd be angry, everything. I don't do temper. I'm not moody. I don't have things like that. It doesn't happen in my will, so I never liked it. And decided what's best for my children. He never played football with the 2 boys. He didn't do anything with the little girl.
This was the guy you married? Okay.
Yeah. So the next guy was 6'4". Yeah, and he actually was a local cobbler. So we met, and Julie being Julie, thought it was lovely, thought everything was nice. I had to rent. So I did move up to Mosley though, but I was renting. this guy moves in with me. We were together a couple of years. Right, I don't see the wood for the trees. He was stealing my bank card. He didn't have a full-time job. He lied. He did have a place where he went to work, but he didn't get paid for it because that was what he decided he was doing for his best friend, to help his best friend out. So, yes, I had then. Yeah, by this point, I then was buying my home in Mosley. And so, yeah. And he was on Stella Artois every day. 4 tins of the stuff. So we agreed to get married, right? This was before I knew any of what I'm telling you now, because he was lovely and he'd cook every day and he was nice and really wonderful with my daughter. He was being this super dad, but he wasn't being super dad because the lies then manifested. I'd bought my son a computer for school. I don't know anything about computers. I do now, but I didn't then. And we got married in 1999 in Folkestone, and we were able to go. Yeah, and we were able to go to France for a month via the family I was marrying into. Okay. So it was all lovely. The family were all lovely, but it was his brothers and their wives, that side of the family. And they were called Bulls, and they were the most wonderful family. And they loved my 3 children. Right, so we got married in the July, and the millennium, 2000. My little girl was poorly, and I rang the family and said, I'm not coming through, but Alan will bring the 2 boys. And the next morning, this was New Year's Eve, they went, so we took the boys, brought them back late. And the 2 boys come running in my bedroom the next morning and said, did Alan phone you at 12 o'clock last night? And I went, no, why? Why should he? I was asleep with Jane. Jane wasn't well. Oh, well, he rang a woman then. Yeah, my boys were only about 10 and 8. So I asked him, and he said yes, and for 6 months he'd been on my computer downstairs on the internet to Texas, America. So that day I told him he was leaving. I didn't know any of this because I didn't know anything was in that computer, but I just went, right, go. I'm not putting up with you doing any cheating whatsoever, just go. Go. But he'd already been using my bank card at this point, and cigarettes every day and drink every day. And I didn't want to lose my house and lose what I'd got for my kids. And then the next husband I met was a fireman. And he worked.
Whoa. Next husband, we're on husband number 3.
Oh yeah, I guess there's more. Right, so bless, it was my 40th birthday, and literally were just children, family in the house, a few people that knew me where I lived, and one of them decided to go across the road there to the fire station and ask a fireman to come over in his kit and wish me happy birthday. So put his arm round me, both looked at each other, took a picture, and something happened in that minute. And it was like, and I'm like, don't be stupid, just carry on doing what you're doing. So a few weeks went by, and the chemist down the road where I used to go, she knew this fireman. What she couldn't tell me was his wife had only died 5 months earlier with bowel cancer. Yeah, and left 2 boys. So I didn't know any of that. So 3 weeks had gone by, and there was a little co-op. So I'd gone after work, kids were in the house, I'd legged it to co-op to get a loaf of bread and your milk. Oh, he's married, he's got 2 little kids, saw him there. And he's like, hi. And my friend from the chemist was stood with him. She said, you 2, for crying out loud, why don't you swap numbers? Brilliant. Yeah, so whilst one of the little boys was being absolutely running around like a lunatic, The other one, good as gold. So 6 months later, I moved into his house, and his dream with his wife that had passed away was to move to Yorkshire. So I said, you can still have it. We can do it. We can do whatever we want to do. And what happened was he first bought us a caravan, so we'd go over to Yorkshire quite a lot with the kids, and and then we saw this house, this 5-bedroom house that was idyllic. You go down one road from Filey, and as you go over the hill, the sea's there, and there's one street, and our house was on this one street. No other houses, fields, cornfields, everything. And for 13 years, we were very, very happy, very happy. All 5 children grew up, had a wonderful time. He, when I met him, could drink a bottle of red wine every night. But in the fire brigade, when he worked in the fire brigade, he managed to do it on his 4 days off or not on his 4 days in. But then he had to retire at 55, and I was 5 years younger. And he hit 2 bottles of red wine a night, and everything changed. And he got nasty, and my children had all left home by this point, and got violent towards me. The little boy Jack, who was 3 when I met him, for 14 years, and considering I'd brought up thousands of children, he was a child from hell. He had ADHD, he was on the autistic spectrum, but his dad would not let him have any specialist teachers or any, he just wouldn't accept it. Not his child. Can't possibly be his child. And I was told to fuck off at 3 years old from this little boy, and for 14 years, I truly, truly did everything for that boy. Everything. But as my 3 left, and his 2, one was starting uni and Jack was coming up to 18, he let that boy still speak to me and treat me awful. But he was treating me awful at that point then. Yeah. So I left him. I left paradise. And then 6 months later, I bought the one downstairs with a beautiful balcony, and I took my kayak out there every day. I bought my kayak back because I didn't have a kayak at that point. I'd got my little bit of paradise back, and I lived there a couple of years on my own, met lots of people. So this person that I next met, like a year and a half later, knew all that story you've just heard, and promised me the world and everything. He bought me an Audi TT for my first birthday. Wow, yeah. He bought himself one first. What I didn't know was, when I met him, he had this clapped out van, and about 3 months, 6 months later, it fell apart. And his mum and dad had passed away, and he owned the house, literally. So all the money was his. So he was renting in Driffield, but he moved into mine when we met. And so we had a considerable lump of money, but this considerable lump of money disappeared rapidly because he was a secret alcoholic. And you couldn't smell it on his breath. I'm not that stupid, having been with someone that had got to that point. Would I have done it again? He'd go out at 8 o'clock in the morning saying he was going for a loaf. He used to cook every meal, because I don't like cooking. So he'd come out with all these excuses all the time. But I was still in employment and working long shifts and blah, blah, blah. He was a computer wizard, but there was a pattern emerging, and every 3 months he'd leave a job, and every 3 months he'd be on the drink all day, every day, and I didn't know because I was working. But I'd come home and he'd be in a state, or 3 months. We got married. She says, we got married. Why did I do that? We got married, but he wasn't at that point And it's like when you're telling these stories, people must think, oh my God, what's she like? But people function and then they change, don't they? So I'd go to all his doctor's appointments with him for all his diabetes, for trying to lose weight, blah, blah, blah. We both agreed to go to the gym. I've never been overweight, but I wanted to go just to support him. He decided he wanted to go to a different gym to me. But I used to go there swimming, and they said, it's not turning up. Going to a pub. Yeah. But he came home in a state one day, and I don't know how he drove the car. And I have never drink and drive. Never. From being 18, I've seen people killed, especially on the roads in Manchester, etc. Never, ever done it. He was doing it all the time. So I was actually going to the police and saying, please, go and get him. And he turned up on my drive, and he was slumped over the steering wheel with a bottle of gin. Full bottle of gin he'd downed. Raw gin. So stuff like that had gone on for about 6 months. And he came home drunk one night, and he got hold of my arm, and I've broken this wrist roller skating when I was 18. And I thought, he's going to break my wrist. So I need him. But he was well intoxicated, and he just fell on the floor. No, I wasn't proud of myself, but I thought, that's the Manchester in you, girl. So I rang the police, and they took him away. And for 3 months I didn't see him. And he went to Scotland to his brother. And then crying and pleading, and I'll be the best person ever in the whole world. So he come back for 3 months. That 3 months was doable. I won't say I loved him at that point, because I didn't trust him anymore. And lo and behold, my fibromyalgia had actually got worse and worse, and I was working 13-hour shifts 3 days a week. And all the work I had done, because it had been for the council, had gone in a pension. So I was owed a pension. But at 60, the government had actually denied my pension, because it's now 66. So I decided to take my pension, because he was working, and we were going to be good. We were going to be okay. Oh no. Oh no. I bought myself a VW camper van. Absolutely loved it. Brand new camper van called Daisy. Loved it. And 2 weeks later, I had a dear neighbour who was in her 80s. Had had a bad fall. And I mean a bad fall. She'd fallen down some metal stairs, and she was grated all the way down one side. And so she'd rang me. I'd gone round. I always go and help her. And I rang him at work. And he's on the phone to his boss going, I've got to go home. I said, I'm not ringing you to bring you home. I don't want you home. I was at the point where I didn't want him in my life at this point. I was just telling him, because he had my brand new van, and I wanted him to just get that home. That would have been ideal. Yeah. So that whole day I was in the hospital. She hadn't fractured her hip, fortunately, but she was in a bad way. So I stayed with her. Her daughter was 2 hours away, so I waited, and the whole day went. I got to 5:30 at night. He hadn't texted me once to ask how we were, considering he had to come home. Yeah, he didn't come home. He went in Hull drinking in my van. And then about 6 o'clock, I said to Stella, I'm going to have to go home now. She's at it to me. You go and make his tea, Roger will want his tea. What is tea? I want to kill him right now. So I gets home, and no car there, no van. I was in his car. So he answered the phone after 10 missed text messages, one answering the phone. Where are you? And he was just so drunk and swearing down the phone, wouldn't tell me where he was. So Driffield is like the high street here, but there's a pub every 3 shops. all the way up that side, all the way down the other side. So humiliatingly, because everyone knew me there, I had to go in every pub looking for him. Got to the last one, and he was asleep on a big tall table like that with 2 double gins in front of him. Been drinking the whole day, seemingly. No idea where my van was. That's all I cared about. That is all I cared about at that point. So I got his shirt collar and stood him up. I don't know where I got the strength from. Don't ask me how I did this. And my van keys dropped out and his flat keys dropped out. So he was that drunk and he didn't know what I was doing. So I grabbed them and put them in my pockets and I dragged him to the front door. But everyone knew me, so people were out in the streets and like, oh, it was just so awful, and he's just swearing and swearing and swearing. And I have a couple of friends who live across the road and they were really good to me, and especially when he started all these antics. So they came to pick me up and they were really kind to him, they were really nice to him, said, get in the car and we'll sort this out. And he was still telling them to swear and everything else. So I went, forget it. So poor Steve, bless, he's the tree arborist, been working really hard the whole day. It got to about 6:30 at night. I said to him, right, Steve, we'll go on for an hour, but please, could you just take me back out? I need to find my van before I report it's either he's left it somewhere or whatever. Driffield had several car parks, so an hour later we went back out. Couldn't see it on any car park. And then there's a lane, and right at the top of the lane, it was mint green like them wings over there. I saw my van, but I hadn't driven it because he'd put me down and told me in them 2 weeks that we'd bought it, you'll never be able to drive this. Like, he was just such a bully. So I'd taken so much crap off this guy. So Sarah, they have a VW, so she drove the van back, but I was scared he was in the back because we'd left it an hour and then gone back, you see, but he wasn't. So I got in and I was exhausted, absolutely exhausted. So I went and got in bed and went to sleep. It was only about 8 o'clock. I think I sobbed myself to sleep, but exhausted. 11 o'clock, my phone's ringing. It was Steve across the road. And he said, Julie, Roger's been hammering on your door for 2 hours. 2 hours. I went, oh God. And he went, well, we phoned the police because you're not having this. So the police came, and this police guy outside's telling him what a good guy he was and what a good man he was, and he'd weed in my hall. I could smell it, and just slumped there expecting me to let him in. And then the policewoman come inside with me and I went, just take him. But I did stay in Driffield for 3 years, nearly 4 years. It'll be 4 years this July, yeah. So I left with a suitcase. That was it. Nothing. And on that day I left, I had to go and find a job and a place to live. And I just went into a local care home. And the matron just said, yeah, you've got a job, definitely. So I worked with the elderly then for about, oh no, I missed a good job out, but never mind. Yeah, so really, but all them...
Whoa, what's this good job? Come on.
Yeah, right, the good job, the amazing job was when I moved to Yorkshire. Yeah, this is my proudest job because in Manchester, your Nursery Nurse qualification was called an NNEB. And also in Manchester was your MVQ. But the MVQ came after the NNEB. When I moved to Yorkshire were a bit behind the times, and your NNEB meant you could get to work with child protection, you could use it in any of the roles. So I first started off as a family support worker and working with very challenging families and behaviour. Well, obviously I dealt with a lot myself, so it came in very useful. And this is where I've maintained that Julie is this person. This is what I'm trying to get across right now, that you can all do whatever you're doing to me, but at the end of the day, I know my roots, I know my worth for the first time in my whole life, only since moving here. Yeah. And so, because when you're going through all these things, it's all negatives and it's all horrible. But I've just sort of re-educated myself, really. Yeah, so I started off with the little babies and up to teenagers. And then this job came up with care leavers. And they'd be 21 moving into the community, living by themselves. And I went for the interview. And again, a lot of women work in that field, a lot of social workers. And I went for the interview and they were bowled over because I learned all my stuff. I learned it all. And I had you had to do a full demonstration for about an hour. But I'd learned all my stuff. I'd been in touch with people and got it all, and even put cartoons in the middle of it so they could have a laugh. But the biggest laugh was, you know, when you go for an interview and you've got a jacket, and mine was a dress and it all matched. But I felt that my zip had broken on my dress and I was absolutely boiling in this interview and I couldn't take my jacket off because the zip had gone. It's like a malfunction. So when they all found out that I'd got the job, they were all quizzing the managers, how's she done that? Like, cheeky asses, I've done it because I was successful. Yeah, so this is in this 14-year span of living down at Big Gap. And then education welfare officer's job came up, which was a lot of money for me in any job I'd had. And it meant that you work for 2 senior schools and 6 junior schools at the time. So you'd have 1,000 pupils in each of the senior schools. Yeah, a hell of a lot of workload. And 2 of the schools, one was St Augustine's and the other was called Graham School in Scarborough. And the head teacher worshipped the ground I walked on from the day I met him. And unknown to me, 4 weeks after me just being part of going in his school, and he'd asked North Yorkshire Council, could he buy me just for his school? Yeah, so that's how proud I was. That's how good I was. So I did that 3-4 years. And it was 1,000 pupils. The year 7 girls were the worst. You had to log every telephone call, every message, every kid walking in your room, and my door was open door policy, so it was ridiculous. So I'd gone to the head and said, I used to have to have the school holidays, so I couldn't go in. And so I put to them, could I go in for half a day through the school holidays, like a few mornings, to get on top of all the other work. You had case conferences, you had meetings for this, meetings for that. Never had time to do all the stuff you should be doing. And then you've got Ofsted coming in and they're questioning you, blah, 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 all the rest of it.
Were these jobs what you did after leaving husband number 3?
No, this is while I was with him. And that job as the SW and bringing up his 2 boys actually burnt me out then. It burnt me out when I got to the state of him being so unwell and not being nice to me. And yeah, so I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which is a disability. But unknown to me at that time, I just thought I'd be okay, I'd be all right. And it's all your nerve endings in your body give you pain. So I've always, and since moving to Yorkshire, I love the sea, I love swimming. I learnt to kayak because we were a good team. We both go out, husband and wife, brilliant times, taught all the kids everything. So the kayak had been a big part of me being okay. Yeah, I want to go back a bit here though. In the growing up in Manchester, for me, Sunday schools, your junior schools, grandparents were a big thing, massive thing. My junior school was just at the top of Barrington Street and up 1 street. So on the way home, one grandma lived, I could walk there, and she'd be at the gate in an apron with a big jam butty. So yeah, that'd get me home, and then Mum would give me my tea. But every weekend, I would then go to my mum's mum, who was Grandma Susie, and she married my dad's brother. So he was then my uncle and my granddad. Yeah, so he loved me telling that story as well. My whole life, he just loved it. And those two absolutely loved and adored each other. But Grandma got Alzheimer's. And they put her in a hospital called Springfield in Crumsall, which then was like a nut house. And it was soul destroying. Yeah. I just remember that. That was just like horrible. Horrible.
It wasn't so many years back.
No. That's what they did. And yeah, put them in straitjackets, do whatever. Yeah. And also my dad was the youngest of 5 brothers, but his dad died when my dad was 1. And my dad never shared that with me till he was 70. And I knew all the uncles and everything else, and I had a second granddad on that side, but was always my granddad. He didn't want to upset me by saying he wasn't my granddad. Yeah. 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 My dad, bless, at 36, had a heart attack. And he was slim, he was skinny, and the ricochet of that meant it affected him big time. My dad had all manual jobs, so every job he had was a hard-working job. But me and him, we was like telepaths for each other. We just so close, so close.
Were you daddy's girl?
Definitely, yeah. And
it was just you and your brother?
It was me and my brother, but my brother was the prodigal son for my mother. Yeah, my mother, which I never found out till she was 80, she's 85 now, she's still here. But, right, when Dad was 75, when COVID hit, Mum had a serious mental breakdown, and at the time they put Mum in the same hospital where my gran had been, but 20-30 years apart. And they treated her for anxiety and depression for a whole year and sent her home. But then the care in the community kept messing with tablets and pills, and COVID had come in, so you couldn't go with them if they had an hospital appointment or anything. But I ended up having to take Mum to that hospital, and she got out of the taxi because I wasn't allowed in the taxi, and was kicking and hitting me and saying I'd had a section. I hadn't had a section. I didn't do anything. I just wanted it to be well. This is only 3-4 years ago. But on that ward, then she was in for a year, but she locked herself in. She didn't know any of us. She couldn't know any of us. And Dad was living at home in Manchester and I was in Yorkshire. So 2.5 drive I would do quite often to go and see both of them. And for 2 years, phoning hospitals all the time. Dad was high risk for falls, serious accidents, and very stubborn, wanted to remain at home, but he got curvature of the spine, and he had hell of a ride. So Mum's came out of hospital, but only managed to stay out about 9 months. So when she went back in, she actually got a psychiatrist, and she rang me and asked me lots of things, and I told her my childhood. And my mum definitely had a split personality. She'd rarely be with me. She'd have a temper. She wouldn't speak to you for a fortnight if she decided she didn't want to. She always went off doing her own thing. Very, very strong character. But none of us knew that she was this till she was 80. And I'd lived with it all my life. When I had my first boyfriend and first husband, it was my birthday, and I got in at 12 o'clock at night, and I'd got in bed, and I was like 20 at this point, about to get married, and she came in and slapped me across the face so hard. And she'd done things over the years that, yeah. So in me having a wonderful and nice childhood, then as I've got older, I've questioned, why was I at my grandparents every weekend? Why didn't Mum want me? Yeah, I was really happy. I was really having a wonderful time with all these things, and Dad taking me here and doing that. And yeah.
Let's get back to it. You've been here 8 months. The dark nights are now getting lighter.
Yeah.
You got your grandkids here.
Oh God, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you see life going forward? I'm guessing it's going to be driven around your grandkids, the way you was just talking about.
It's totally driven around them. The Darren and Una and my Jane, they won't be wanting their children to go with any other person if they want. They'll rarely have nights out, but do you know, that is what I'm here for. And only the other day, Darren's wife said, we want to go away a weekend next December. And I went, December? You're not going before then? I'll have them before that. And yeah, so schools always throw an odd day in. That's why they come in tomorrow, and I've got on Friday. I love it. I think schools do whatever you want. I'll just get the kids. I get the kids, yeah.
Is that there's not many people that could face that new start.
Yeah.
But all the stuff that's happened in your life, all the different things have given you the lessons and the courage and the confidence to say, yeah, come on, bring it on, let's have this.
And looking back, can I show you? I've got a t-shirt and I'm not being rude here. Is this finished? Sorry. When 3 years ago was the final chapter of him going, I had a tattoo. I've never had a tattoo in my life. Okay. But because of my upbringing and what my beliefs, I had the butterfly.
Which is?
New beginnings. The butterfly is new beginnings, totally my beginnings as a child. I love nature. I love like Titchfield, Titchfield Haven. But I have that butterfly tree is my spiritual tree.